Welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Cabral.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the show. We're here today with our first house call of the weekend. This is my opportunity to really connect with our community. I really do cherish these shows. Super excited every time I open up this big document and look at not only the new questions of the day, but all of the questions that we were able to answer in the past. So I do consider this a great privilege to be able to speak with our community and look at what they have going on in their life. And I know that so many people are struggling right now that this is, as I said, a real privilege to be able to share with you my experience of working with tens of thousands of people and overseeing well over 250,000 client appointments. And I say that because I want you to know that the information that you're getting from me, it works in the real world. That's more important to me than anything else. Meaning, I was just having this conversation with Sal from Mind Pump, and we were essentially talking about, we're both big on research, meaning he researched the fitness industry and health and all those great things all the time. And I do the same because we want to know what the latest research is. But the truth is, if we're talking with our colleagues and someone else that we trust is saying, hey, check this out, this is really working for me, and here's why, that's the important thing, and here's why I believe it's working at a deeper level, well, then we are open to doing that. There is no need to wait the 10, 20, or in some Ayurvedic cases, 6,000 years for a scientific study to back it up. A lot of scientific studies as well they're in a very controlled environment, and it doesn't always mimic the real world. So what I like to say is one part modern science, one part Ayurvedic wisdom, or just ancient wisdom. So that's what we like to blend here on the show, and of course, all of that put to the test in the real world. So when you hear an answer from me, no, I cannot give you a diagnosis, treatment, or cure, especially not over a podcast. That is somehow relegated by the FDA to medical doctors only, which to this day I simply can't understand, since the majority of Western medicine is simply built around pharmacology and the introduction of chemicals into a person's body, which of course was never missing in the first place. But before I go on a long-winded rant about my displeasure with modern medicine, which of course there are obviously some great parts to it, mostly acute and emergency based, but why don't we get into our community's questions, because I think that's probably better served. All right, first question today is from Lala. Lala asks, hi, Dr. Cabral. I hope you're doing great. I can't thank you enough for all of these Q&As that you do. You are truly my superhero, or a superhero. Thank you, Lala. I appreciate that. She goes on to say, I had my thyroid checked 6 months ago, and my TSH and T3 were really great, but my T4 was on the lower end. My doctor asked me to retest 3 months later to check if T4 would go up. I recently retested again, and nothing's changed. My TSH and T3 are great, but my T4 continues to be low. I don't understand what's going on. I am on my early 20s, exercise regularly, eat predominantly plant-based, mostly organic, take zinc, full-spectrum magnesium, daily activated multi, B-complex, and omega-3. I've noticed, though, that when I don't take my supplements, I do feel tired that day, but apart from no other symptoms, my gut is healthy, I believe, because I did the candida and bacteria optimizer protocol last year. Any idea what the root cause could be? Would this be something to worry about? I can get very paranoid with these things, sometimes worry a little bit too much. Okay, Lala, thank you for the question. I apologize that I had such difficulty reading that. That's not on you, that's on me. I talk about that I read multiple books per week and thousands of books, over the course of my lifetime, but I don't read out loud how I read. And I always want to share that with people. I'm basically making excuses for why I can't read these questions specifically, but you can go back and check out my podcast I've done on speed reading and those types of things before. I won't get into that today. All right. So basically what you're saying is that you had your thyroid checked 6 months ago and your TSH and T3 were great, but your T4 was on the lower end. And your doctor asked to retest 3 months later to check if your T4 would go up. Recently retested it, nothing's changed. All right, well, so there's good news. I mean, this is good news about this. Here's why. Because let's look at how the thyroid works. So the thyroid works not unlike the adrenals. So we always think of like the thyroid as kind of separate, but no, the ovaries, the thyroid, the adrenals all work on the same type of axis, and they're called positive and negative feedback loops. So it starts with your hypothalamus and your pituitary gland. So they're really working one and the same. I mean, it's difficult for the pituitary gland not to be working as well if the hypothalamus is working well. I mean, they're one and the same. The difference is things can go wrong at the more organ-based level, or at least at the systems-based level with the adrenals, the thyroid, or the ovaries. And again, this goes for men as well. So let's talk about this at a high level. The hypothalamus just gets signals from the body. It's basically like the epicenter of the brain, that we call it the thermostat, and it's going to tell your body what to do. So if you perceive stress, well, typically in the beginning, let's say you're not exhausted, but let's say in the beginning your body's fresh. Okay, so we send the alarm stage, so then we start to produce more norepinephrine, we start to produce more adrenaline, we start to produce more cortisol. Okay, that gets the adrenals working, right? Okay, on the thyroid's end, at least in the beginning, we're raising thyroid stimulating hormone, that's your TSH. Then your TSH is just going to call for more T4, and the T4 is hopefully going to be converted to T3. That's essentially how it works. In the beginning, hormones actually get elevated as well, and then again, estrogen levels, progesterone levels start to drop too. So that's what happens in the end for everything once the body becomes exhausted. But typically, in women, a lot of times progesterone will drop first, then thyroid, and then eventually cortisol. And again, you can lab test all of this. I can't recommend it enough. There's nothing better than the saliva and blood-based hormone labs that we do right at home. You can find those at equilibriumnutrition.com. It's simply called the Stress Hormones Mood and Metabolism Test. There's not a better test in the world. I mean, I'm telling you that right now, and this isn't tooting Equilibrium Nutrition's horn, because we don't own any labs. And I always like to tell people that we are not in the lab business. We are in the results business. That's what we do. We help people get results. So we simply partner with CLIA or CLIA labs. That these are basically labs that you can trust. They're regulated. They're used for at-home labs, so they're efficacious in their actual data and readings. Millions of labs have been done. And what we do is we find out people's labs, we look at the underlying root causes, then we develop protocols to help rebalance those. I mean, that's really what we do. So now let's get to your thyroid. Why this might not be a big issue is that if your TSH is good, now let's qualify that. A good TSH is 0.5 to 2. So 0.5 to 2.0. Because on a regular lab test with an endocrinologist or your MD, they'll say anything up to 5 is okay. That's not okay. It's not a disease state. Sure, it's not hypothyroidism, but what we have is a suboptimal thyroid, which could lead to fatigue, brain fog, cold hands, cold feet, poor circulation, low libido, thinning of the hair, thinning of the eyebrows. I could go on, dry skin, but go back and check out my thyroid shows. And there's a bunch of shows just on thyroid. You can just go to stevencabral.com/podcast, scroll through the top images, and just click on thyroid, and you'll find all the thyroid shows. So that's the thing. Make sure your TSH is 0.5 to 2. Okay, if that's good, great. And then make sure your T3 is within range. And again, depending on the lab, the range is going to be different, so I can't really give you that. But if TSH is good and T3 are good, you're probably good. And here's why. T4 comes before T3. T3 is converted essentially in the cells, and that's about 70% of active thyroid. So T4 is going to be moving towards T3. That's the truth. So if your T3 is good and your T4 isn't as good, I'm not as worried. It's when T3 isn't good, but T4 is okay, well, then there's an issue there because it could be converting to reverse T3 or not converting at all in the cell. I know this is getting a little complicated, but it's what you need to know. Like, this is how you figure out your thyroid. So again, I can't give you a treatment protocol, nor will I, but if I was in this person's position, I would be using, for sure, daily foundational protocol level 2 or level 3. I would be using the immunity protocol. You're using that already with vitamin D, zinc, great. And then I'd be using daily thyroid support, 2 at breakfast, 2 at dinner. All right, thank you, Lala, for writing in. Mario's up next. Every time I take the daily probiotic by Equilibrium, my tongue gets a black coating. So weird. From my research, it indicates a Vata-based imbalance, but it's odd that I only get it when I take the probiotic. Do you think that it might be because it's rebalancing my gut microbiome, so it's like a die-off effect? And then Mario actually goes on in the next question to write, "Hi, Dr. Cabral. Sorry, I forgot to say in the last question that I didn't get a black coating on the tongue with the clean gut probiotic, only the daily probiotic. Maybe this information might make a difference in identifying the reason. Haha." All right, Mario. Yeah, I'm happy to answer this. And this is why I love being able to do what my mentor taught me, which is bring Ayurvedic to the modern world. Because yes, when you read online and just read about Ayurveda, anything dark, black with the body is basically a vata-based imbalance, like circles under the eyes, a dark mark like I got on the top of my hips. So the top of my hips, it's not wildly discolored. I don't want to say that. I mean, I have, I guess, somewhat darker skin, more of Mediterranean complexion, I guess, for melanin. But the top of my hips absolutely are darker, like this little band around it, right above the obliques or right above what's called the iliac crest, that hip bone. And I got that when I had Addison's disease. It's one of the reasons why they knew I had Addison's disease, because a discoloration of sometimes the elbows or the hips happens with this cortisol-based issue. And then again, that's Vata-based, right? For sure. So Vata is essentially lack of circulation, lack of oxygen, and that's what a black tongue can certainly show. But that's not the issue in your case, right? The issue in your case is not a Vata-based imbalance. I mean, maybe, but that's not what this is. This is most likely, again, I can't tell you for sure, but what happens is, believe it or not, when you take, and this is so rare, like this is very rare. I've never heard of this before. I mean, Mario, I want to let you know, never heard of this before, never seen it before. I've been using probiotics by, I don't know, let's say 60 different companies for the last 20 years. But here's what I can tell you. There is a difference between the clean gut probiotic and the daily probiotic support. The clean gut probiotic, slightly different strains, and it contains Saccharomyces boulardii, which helps to essentially keep yeast in check. And then the daily probiotic, it contains more aggressive strains, so more strains, more good stuff. I think about twice the amount of good bacteria. So it is possible that you have a larger amount of sulfur in your saliva, in your mouth, or in your gut, and that bacteria is actually reacting somehow with that sulfur and leading to a temporary discoloring of the tongue, and that's leading to the black tongue. Now, I can't give that specifically. You can certainly check with your doctor, check with your MD. It's only happening, again, when you take this specific probiotic. I wonder that if you took it mid-meal, if it would make a difference, if it's only on the empty stomach, if there's more sulfur going on at that time for it to mix with. I also wonder if you actually put it in your smoothie, whether it make a difference, or if you never let it touch your tongue. It's interesting, but I don't know. Of course, I'd love to hear back, Mario, and let me know if any of that makes a difference if you did it mid-meal, which is still okay. You can take your probiotic mid-meal. It's not that it's going to totally get destroyed. It's not true at all. Our daily probiotic support actually has the very best in encapsulation. It's called a delayed release capsule. And so what it does is it's not enteric-coated. That's different. It's delayed release, so it actually waits till it passes through the stomach acid. So, Mario, hopefully that's helpful. That is my best guess, and that's based on the fact that when you take bismuth, that it can actually turn your tongue black because it reacts with the sulfur in your mouth as well. Both of these are thought to be harmless, but again, I can't tell you that for sure. And one other thing that you might want to look into is my Ayurvedic morning routine for the mouth as well, which is the oil pulling, toothbrushing, and tongue scraping. Okay, you can check that out on a previous show, and you can find a really great tongue scraper, a copper one like they use in Ayurvedic medicine, at equilibriumnutrition.com under the little lifestyle tab. Sarah's up next. What are your thoughts on sea moss? Oh, that's a really great question. I don't know that anybody's asked about sea moss in some time. So sea moss is actually a great plant-based food. So why am I a fan of sea moss? Okay. Well, it's got more popular for sure because of Dr. Sebi. No doubt about that. I'm sure that he was one of the proponents that brought it more mainstream. But sea moss has actually been used for a long time. It's quite interesting because when I was reading a bunch of years back on Dr. Weston Price, and I read about one of the particular communities of people that actually use the peat in their water for boiling. And it could have been one of the many reasons why they had great levels of minerals. Well, basically, I'm going to put it this way. Sea moss is fantastic for the amount of minerals that it has in it. It certainly has some vitamins and some great iodine and other properties like that for the thyroid. So it's good for metabolism, good for digestion. And there's some research, again, albeit not great research yet, but it actually may help with oxygenation of your cells. So that could be one of the reasons why, of course, Dr. Sebi included it with a lot of his supplements and his plans, was because, well, he was big on an alkaline-based diet. He was big on what they're calling like an electric diet. Again, these are all just kind of buzzwords, but certainly oxygenating the cells is helpful. So, Sarah, hopefully that's helpful. And yes, I'm a fan of it. I think it's great. Do I think everybody needs to be taking it? No. I mean, there's a lot of great products out there. If you're going to take CMOS, you want to make sure that you get in a clean variety, no heavy metals, okay? Fiona is up next. Hi, Dr. Cabral. I hope you and your family are doing good during these difficult times. So you always say that a lot of people with increased intestinal permeability tend to have a lot of IgG food sensitivities. However, this is a reaction to the protein, right? What about all of those people that react to a lot of herbs? This wouldn't be a reaction to protein, would it? Thank you so much, Fiona. Fiona, that's a great question, and that is why people have food sensitivities that don't always show up on a food sensitivity test. And that's also why you don't see herbs tested a lot on food sensitivity tests, because the likelihood of reaction from an IgG perspective towards the protein is low. I mean, it really is. Let me share with you the differences. The reason why you want to run a food sensitivity test for your kids and for yourself is that, no doubt about it, everybody has like one or two random food sensitivities that they eat on a weekly basis that's causing inflammation. And the reason why it's causing inflammation is that it's causing an IgG reaction, which is an immune reaction. And when immune cell, immunoglobulin G in this particular case, reacts to that food a day or 2 days or 3 days later, it creates inflammation from that reaction. Then that reaction shows up as brain fog, headaches, learning disabilities, fatigue, low mood, etc., etc., etc. Right? It doesn't show up as an immune like, oh, I'm sick. No, it shows up as some form of inflammation. So that's why, again, modern conventional medicine has such a difficult time understanding that, because for them, everything has to be so black and white. It's like, well, you either have the disease or you don't, and we can't help you any other way. It's so simple-minded when you have some of the most brilliant people in the world as MDs, and yet they have to reduce everything to just complete simplicity of like, should we prescribe a medication or not? That's the worst way to go about medicine. It's not helpful. It's very disheartening that, again, we have brilliant people going to medical school, and unless you're in the surgery or emergency medicine space, you don't get to use your full skill set, because you're essentially matching up with blood work with the disease state with the medication. I mean, how is that helping anybody? I don't get that at all. Anyway, okay, so you still want to run a food sensitivity test. And yes, it tests towards proteins and veggies and fruit, and because yes, there's still protein in those things. And of course, meats, dairy, etc. Okay, so why would people then react to herbs when it's not a protein-based reaction? Well, there's a difference. So people can be reacting to the histamines that are produced, or histamines actually naturally in these foods. For example, let's take some things like cinnamon, right? Cinnamon, great for blood sugar regulation, great for metabolism, all these good things. Well, but also high in histamines, right? So it could cause a reaction. And then there's also lectins, and then there's the salicylates, and there's oxalates. So someone that's very sensitive could react to any of these things in the essentially outer coating of the protective part of these particular herbs. So what does that mean? Well, it typically means then they have some type of what's called immune Th2 dominance. And that is the body being more sensitive because of previous breakdowns in the immune system or previous gut issues or stress, etc. That's then imbalanced them right now. Now, you can get better. You really can. So, because I used to be massively Th2 immune dominant. Now, you typically, not always, but you typically sway in one direction. So again, my dad is Th1 dominant, but my mom is Th2 dominant, and hers are very high Th2 dominance. I'm always swinging towards Th2 dominance, never towards Th1. My wife's Th1 dominant and never moves towards Th2. It's very funny. My wife will never get sick. If she gets sick, it is some strange disorder in the universe. Like for her to ever get a cough or a cold, I mean, my wife and I have been together a long time. It just doesn't happen. I mean, if it happens even once in a year, it's shocking. And if she gets sick, she's better in a day. It is unbelievable to see her immune system. Her dad's the same exact way. So there's definitely the genetic component to that. Me, my body's far more sensitive. It's just the way that it is. So it's not like my wife doesn't have reactions and things like that in other ways. It's just more Th1 dominant. So what I recommend, since I could go on a long rant about Th1, Th2, and I want to get in one more question today because we try to give an overview, it most likely has more to do with a sensitivity to the histamines, oxalates, lectins than anything else. It doesn't mean eliminate them, but it certainly means to continue to work on stress levels, gut permeability, and do eliminate them for some time, just the ones that are triggers for you. All right, one more question from Tessa today. Hi, Dr. Cabral. What is the most effective way to help lower triglycerides? I recently adopted a mostly plant-based diet a couple months ago and have lost 10 pounds. I am still significantly overweight, but working on it with diet and exercise, and I had my gallbladder removed last year for gallstones. My recent blood work showed my total cholesterol at 148 with slightly elevated triglycerides. Thanks for all your help. I've learned so much from your podcast. Thank you, Tessa. Appreciate the kind words. And sure, let's help you on this with your triglycerides. Okay, so Tessa, I don't want to overwhelm you with all the different things that high triglycerides could be, but I'm going to give you my typical list, and then what I'm going to do is give you the way that most people can rebalance it naturally very, very easily. So you don't have high cholesterol, which is good, but you're starting to border on low cholesterol. So I just want you to be aware of that, right? Because cholesterol below 140 typically isn't good. Cholesterol above 200 typically isn't good. Now, it could be harmless in either direction, but the sweet spot for most people is between 160 and 200, with LDL below 100 or 110, HDL above at least 50, but certainly it could be higher than that as well. And then with a cholesterol to HDL ratio of 3-1 or less. So that's just kind of a synopsis on your lipid panel. Now, again, some people argue cholesterol of 280 is fine. Well, again, you're playing a dangerous game at that point. It might be fine, but it very well may not be fine, right? So I like to err on the side of your caution, like you're going to be fine, if this is the case, right? But we know that cardiovascular disease obviously can be a lot more than cholesterol. I mean, it has a lot more to do that with that, of course, than it can be calcification of the arteries, it can be high cortisol, et cetera, et cetera. So let's go with triglycerides, though. It could be some form of metabolic syndrome. It could be some form of liver-based congestion. So we do want to look at that with bile and those types of things. Could be atherosclerosis. Could be poor metabolism of fats. I'll get more into that in just a moment. Could be blood sugar-based dysregularity. I'll get into that in a moment. Could be lower thyroid. Could be adrenal-based issues as well. That would go with thyroid, high or low adrenal function. And again, there could be something wrong with the overall fatty liver. So let's talk then, what are the things that I see in my practice that rebalances triglycerides pretty quickly? Again, I'm not giving you any treatment protocols, no cures, anything like that. But here's what I see very quickly. Reduce the amount of fructose in your diets, okay? Make sure that you do lose the weight that you need to. Again, I'm not telling you what to do for triglycerides, but for a program, 21-day functional medicine detox, then move on with the fat lossity program. That's what I'd recommend for weight loss. It works fantastically well. It really does. And they're guaranteed to work. So it's not like, oh, maybe they work, maybe they don't. They're guaranteed to work. That's the thing. I want people to know that what we do is guaranteed to work. If it doesn't work for you, please return it. I'm okay with that. I guarantee you results. That's what I want. I want to be the person that guarantees you results. That's the point. You have to be able to count on someone. And I want you to know, hey, even if it didn't work for you, which it will, but even if it didn't work for you, no hard feelings. That's the thing. That's the thing. Return it. No hard feelings. That's what it's all about. You can still listen to the podcast. We're still going to help you in the future. That's what this is about. This is not a game. This is not a marketing thing, which again is not my expertise. We show people what we do in private practice. We want people around the world to be able to do it. All right. So here's the thing. Lower your fructose levels. Okay. You're going to start with, again, the 21-day detox and the fat lossity program. You're going to slowly inch those back in. You're going to reduce a high-fat diet because you just don't know if your liver can keep up with it right now. That's the truth. Some people can, some people can't, especially people that ApoE4 gene. They can't do it as well, okay? Doesn't mean they're bad people. Doesn't mean fat's bad. It's just they're not compatible. That's all that it is, right? And then also reduce or remove alcohol. Can't recommend that enough. If you have high triglycerides, lower that alcohol at least for a 3 to 4 month period of time. Retest those levels, see what it looks like. I like triglycerides personally to be below 100, typically somewhere between 50 and 75. It seems to be the sweet spot for most people. So, Tessa, hopefully that was helpful. Thank you, everyone, for tuning into today's show. As always, I appreciate this. Of course, if the show is helpful, please do feel free to share it with anyone else you believe it could serve. And don't forget, tomorrow I'll be answering more of our community's questions. So stay tuned. Take care. Enjoy your weekend. Thanks so much for just tuning into the show. And before you go, you won't want to miss this. We are bringing back one of our more popular offers to date from Equilibrium Nutrition. And that is anyone that purchases a complete Candida, metabolic, and vitamins test this week while supplies last gets a free complete minerals and metals test free. This is a $300 value. The reason we are doing this is that those two tests combined create our starter lab testing kit, which means this. It's going to look at your gut function, yeast, fungal-based overgrowth, bacterial overgrowth, good, bad, looking at the balance there. We're looking at the Krebs cycle, and that just means the energy of your body. We're looking at neurotransmitter feedback. We're looking at your vitamin levels, an absolutely amazing test. That is the complete Candida metabolic and vitamins test. We're looking at detox factors there. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. And then we combine that with the minerals and metals test to now not just look at your vitamins, but actually to look at your electrolytes, to look at the stress energy levels in your body, and also to look at all of those trace minerals that make such a huge difference with your energy, your mood, your concentration, your overall health. And then we take a look at those heavy metals. Are you dealing with any levels of mercury or lead or arsenic or cadmium? It is a transformative starter pack. And this week, while supplies last, we want to make sure that we can give you our best offer to date. And that is when you purchase that complete Candida metabolic and vitamins test, we're going to give you on us the minerals and metals test completely free. You can check that out over at equilibriumnutrition.com. The two tests have to be done by one person, but we can ship them pretty much anywhere in the world. So check it out over at equilibriumnutrition.com to save this week while supplies last.